22nd, 2020. I'd like to call this evening's City Council meeting to order. If we could all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Could I have the roll call?
Councilmember Boff.
Here.
Councilmember Stimmel.
Here.
Councilmember Williams.
Present.
Councilmember Strobehn.
Absent.
Councilmember Cerveny.
Here.
And Mayor Thornton.
Here. Thank you. Next is the consent agenda. If there are no requests for any items to be removed, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
A second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next on the agenda is citizens' public comment. If anyone would like to address the council, please step up to the podium. If you would give us your name and address and limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Hi everybody, Skip Carlson, 35915 Northwest Jenny Creek Road, the center. It's an old thing. I just want to advocate that council consider lowering the speed limit up at the intersection. I know that up at the Center Road and Paradise Park Road to 25. Where it's 35 currently. I realize that you've got the intersection is being studied and whatnot, but I think that's something the council could do. The attorney would know whether or not you could do that. As far as expenditures, it wouldn't be very expensive. You're looking at about 3 signs and recalibrating the little light thing. Wouldn't be a very expensive proposition to do. That's all.
Okay, thank you.
Dennis Hill, 1316 West Alder Place. I want to piggyback on Skip there. I've mentioned this a couple times at the mayor's meeting. The 3 roundabouts that are in Woodland all have a sign that precludes prior to going into the roundabout. It shows you the roundabout and a sign that either says 15 miles an hour or 20 max on those 3 roundabouts. And I can see that that is being pretty much obeyed, kind of, sort of. But I would also encourage that we consider doing that up here, at least on our side, where we could get the people at least aware of the fact that they need to be down, not going 35 or 40 miles an hour entering into that roundabout, and that's what they're doing. So I would think for a safety situation that should be, again, 15, 20 miles an hour when you get to the actual roundabout, maybe 25 up to that point. I would certainly second what Skip said there. And I think for safety, I would encourage the mayor and the council to consider doing what they can to help make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sean Wright, 305 West 3rd Street. I have a quick note about something I found particularly impactful at Planning Commission last time I attended. I don't have much prepared, and I didn't prepare much in way of speaking tonight, but I did just want to mention it. An individual provided a presentation which was particularly impactful, especially as a father, thinking about all the development going on within the northwest highway area. I took a look at some of the traffic study reports for some of the developments over there, and I noticed that there wasn't much mention of pedestrian study. Rather, it was all based on VMT, vehicle trips, which is, of course, a concern given all the new vehicle trips. But one person did bring to the attention that kids will have to actually get into the storm drain ditch to be able to get to school if they want to, which is a huge concern. And since we didn't require the developers to do that at the time of development, and they didn't know that the pedestrians wouldn't be able to get to school, have a safe route to school, in their traffic report, we didn't require them to do that. So now that cost will fall onto the public facilities to provide that pedestrian area along that frontage that extends past their property line. So I think that's a concern going forward, is how can we hold these developers responsible for making sure our kids can get to school safely. I, for one, am not impacted by that. My daughter is going to be able to walk to school very easily since I live in the downtown. But especially with all that new development, I think we need to make sure that kids can get to school safely and make the traffic engineers note and show a path for pedestrians reaching the school. I think that's very key to positive development in our community.
Thank you.
They own a little bit of land up here, but it's not where they chose to build. Yes, he's talking about this. Yeah, I think so.
Laura Martin, 903 East 7th Street. So I have a couple questions. One being the citizen comments again. I don't understand why it's before any of the finance or any of the staff reporting. So we can't comment on what's going on or if we have any concerns or anything. We put it right in the beginning of the meeting, which I think is even after council or before council meetings as well. So if that could be changed, that would be great. My second question is about the budget. So for the 2020 budget that got approved, we talked nothing about adding a building permit employee and then getting rid of a public works manager. And so I actually see public works going up $11,000 for 2020. But if we're getting rid of a public works supervisor, that doesn't make sense of why it would be going up. And then where is that full-time position for the other one? So is there going to be a budget amendment coming up that talks about that or what? Because here when it talks about streaming city staff, talks about everything that you guys have planned for 2020. I don't see anything in there about that. So I guess, yeah, my question is, will there be a budget amendment? And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no one else stepping up to the podium, I'll close public comment. And next is the mayor's report. And I only have one thing this evening, and that is to remind the council that we will be having our city council retreat this Saturday. It's going to be at the Public Works Building. It'll begin at 9 a.m. So I look forward for everybody being there. And right now we have it scheduled from 9 to 3. So that's all I have this evening. Next on the agenda is the attorney's report.
Thank you. I have kind of a short report. I feel compelled to not let this Growth Management Hearings Board appeal go so easily, because even though we won at the Court of Appeals in August, and the Supreme Court, as of January 8th, denied review, the way the appellate process works is the decision is now, the Court of Appeals remanded it back to the Growth Board for, action not inconsistent with the Court of Appeals decision. And if you've read the Court of Appeals decision, it's pretty clear, pretty cut and dried. Our two issues are issue 5 and 10, and also issue 19 was at play, doesn't involve the annexed lands. So today we had a Growth Management Hearings Board hearing on the county's motion to confirm that the county is in current compliance with the Growth Board's order. If you remember, every 6 months there's this compliance check back. So this time the county says, well, we've taken the three remaining issues are 19, 5, and 10. 19 had to do with industrial lands, the industrial lands reserve, and they adopted an ordinance that withdrew those. 19 is gone. 5 and 10 were dealt with by the Court of Appeals, so the county's asking for that to be, the county be found in compliance. So this is sort of like a glimmer of arguments to come. FutureWise said, not so fast. The Court of Appeals mandate hasn't issued, which is after the Supreme Court denies review, then the Court of Appeals basically issues its final judgment, which is called a mandate. And that was supposed to come out, I think, 10 days of when the Supreme Court ruled. So it's currently late. We checked, and according to the Court of Appeals clerk, it's all but signed. So it should come out Friday. So anyhow, so there's that technical detail. But then also, FutureWise said, again, even once it issues, not so fast, that there was a sub-issue in issue 5 that the Court of Appeals didn't deal with. So I would expect that as this is remanded back to the Growth Board, they wouldn't ask for a new briefing, they wouldn't have a hearing, they would just issue an order resolving everything, and that would be that. That would be the end of it. That would be the final end of it. But given the argument that FutureWise raised, and kind of the not instantaneous rejection of that argument by the Growth Board members, or 3 of them, that they might actually ask for a briefing and a hearing as this thing comes sailing on back down on review. So go back and take a look at the Court of Appeals decision. It doesn't address issue 5, issue 10, issue 19. It doesn't deal with it in that categorization, but rather it addressed all issues related to the annexed lands. All issues related to the annexed lands. And so my feeling is they better not ask for briefing. They better not have a hearing on this stupid argument. This kind of trying to breathe life into this corpse of their appeal. So that was just kind of a glimmer. Nothing, the Growth Board said we're not going to rule on this motion until the mandate issues. That should be Friday. And then it'll just respond to the county's motion for confirmation of compliance with GMA, basically, which it's supposed to come back on remand. And so I think that's the appropriate place for any of these arguments to be raised. Not so FutureWise shouldn't have raised this stupid argument at this juncture. So the case is over, but I'll keep you posted. Okay.
Okay.
Any questions about that ambiguity? Okay.
Thank you. Any questions for the city attorney? Okay, next are council comments. Councilmember Boff.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. The C-Tran Board held its monthly meeting last week, and most of the time the meeting was held in discussion about the status of the BRT line on Mill Plain. The key points that came up on that status report: good news that the Federal Transit Administration has approved C-Tran's project development request. So that was a major step. The FTA rating determination is expected in February. That's important because that will determine future funding, amount of funding, and responsiveness to C-Tran's request. C-Tran hopes to have what's called a medium or a higher rating. The Fort Plain BRT program received a high-medium rating, which was good. And C-Tran would like to see a similar type of rating for the Mill Plain project. The design phase is now 30% complete. 36 out of 37 of the stations on the bus line are what C-Tran calls locked in. Locations are locked in place, and C-Tran is now in the process of speaking with all the merchants and the businesses that are located near each of those stations. They're ironing out the details. The 37th station is not locked in place yet. That station is to be located downtown. It's on Evergreen between C and Broadway, I believe, and C-Tran is talking with the property owner along that location. Discussions are ongoing with Clark County regarding the property which C-Tran has in sight for the Eastern Transit Terminal. And milestones for 2020 are a 60% design completion procurement of construction management services. They're looking to complete the Federal Transit Administration risk assessment, and as I mentioned, obtain a medium or higher rating from the FTA on the project. And then they also are hoping to receive a commitment for FTA Small Starts grants. And the other major development was a change in the leadership on the board. Adrian Cortez, who was formerly the chair of the C-Tran board, was recently selected by the Battleground City Council to assume the mayoral duties in that city. So he has declined to maintain that position. So in his place, the board selected Mayor Ann McInerney Ogle, who's the mayor of Vancouver, so she will become the chair. And then County Councilor John Blum will be the replacement for Mayor Cortez. So John will be the vice chair of the C-Tran board for this next year. Okay. And that's all I got.
Very good. Good report. Thank you. Councilmember Stimmel.
Nothing tonight, Mayor, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Williams.
Just one thing, and this is a C-Tran issue. Saw the new Yakult bus the other day, or saw a picture of it, and I want to thank C-Tran for the support of our railroad, because that's all it was on. It was stuff about the Chalachi Prairie Railroad. But it looked good. They had it over at their town hall meeting on Monday. So that's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Very good. Councilmember Cerveny.
Thank you, Mayor. I spent an enjoyable Martin Luther King holiday with a number of Kaiser Permanente employees doing some give back projects around the area. So I always find that very rewarding, networking and learning about a number of other individuals in the communities, and just getting a better feel of what's going on out there in their industries as well as their communities. So great opportunities out there on that particular day each year.
Okay.
That's it.
Thank you. Okay, so next we're going to go into staff reports, but before that, I neglected to recognize a guest that we have here this evening. So Ridgefield Councilmember Ron Onslow is here. Welcome, Ron. It's good to see you. Thank you for coming to our meeting. Ron has been involved with the Ridgefield City Council for a while, and formerly the mayor, so yeah, it's good to see you. And then also this evening, we do have Clark County Fire Rescue. Chief Peeler is here this evening, and I would ask him to, maybe if you would like to share a few comments with the council as our first staff report.
Thank you, Mayor. Excuse my voice right now. I typically wake up about 4 a.m., so by this time of night, the first thing that starts going is my voice. So bear with me for a moment on that. But anyway, I'm Ben Peeler with Clark County Fire and Rescue. I'm the Division Chief in charge of operations. So Clark County Fire Rescue, just to give a little background, since it's been a while since we've been here. We provide service to the City of La Center, to City of Ridgefield, and City of Woodland, as well as unincorporated Clark County, a large portion of unincorporated Clark County, pretty much from Fairgrounds north. And we cover about 125 square miles. In that area, we staff 4 fire engines and 1 ladder truck throughout that area. We're fortunate here in La Center, right pretty much in the heart of your population center, is one of our staffed companies, just a couple blocks over from here. Clark County Fire Rescue was formed by Fire Districts 11 and 12. In about 2008, those 2 fire districts merged. And prior to that, Fire District 12, in July 1st of 95, matter of fact, I was a young volunteer here at the time at District 12, assumed the contract for services for the City of La Center. After a couple years of contract services, the City of La Center annexed into Fire District 12. And when Fire District 12 formed with District 11 into Clark County Fire Rescue. And kind of evolved from there. So a little bit of background on that. And last year, just a quick rundown, within the city limits of La Center, we average about 1 call a day inside city limits. So, like I said, we're pretty fortunate to have a staff fire company right here in the middle of the population center, given the response volume there. Now, that said, that engine does provide service up Jenny Creek, north, out east, up Lockwood Creek Road, up its primary engine that does go up to the Cowlitz Reservation as well. And, but for the most part, when it's not on other runs, it's sitting here in the centers of the center as well. So very fortunate to have decent response times out of the city. So last year, Clark County Fire Rescue, we responded to about 4,200 calls a year within the service area between the three cities, the reservation, and unincorporated Clark County in that area. So with that, some exciting things this year. We just had 3 additional firefighters that brought our FTEs. We have a total of about 55 full-time employees for Clark County Fire Rescue, and of that, only about 3 are support staff, and the rest are all operational people, be it the 4 chief officers, myself, one of the 4 chief officers, battalion chiefs, and the personnel on the fire engines. So we're pretty operational centric. We try to keep our focus and staffing in the street, providing the service. So with that, we have this year we punched the order on 2 new fire engines, one of which is pretty great because the Cowlitz tribe is purchasing one. And what it costs is about $650,000 for a new fire engine these days. It's insane how much a fire engine costs. And so very fortunate that engine will be the engine that will get relocated here. So within the city of La Center, we'll have a brand new fire engine. And then the other fire engine we're purchasing with our capital funds is likely going to end up in Woodland up in that north end because of just the call volume there. And in addition, we had 3 new firefighters this year, so each shift gets an additional firefighter, and what that's assisting with is with overtime reduction. So, you know, we start working on that balance of cost of overtime versus full-time employees, and we hit that tipping point where it made sense to add 3 additional employees to help offset the overtime budget. So, let's see, bring down my list as well. In addition, this last year we took over as well within the city, fire marshal inspections and fire investigations is our next real step. Right now, Clark County Fire Marshal's Office provides a lot of fire investigations to the outlying cities, and effective this year, our fire marshals have gotten certified to become certified fire investigators as well. And we'll be hiring a .5 fire inspector for existing occupancies. That will be going into existing occupancies and meeting our requirements to do regular inspections. And what that does, you know, you always hear the term inspections, like, oh, here comes the fire department going to tell me can't have my extension cord. What that really does help is Washington Survey and Ratings Bureau. They're the insurance regulatory, or not regulatory, they're the entity that insurance companies look at that drive their costs for that they pass down to our citizens and residents. So one of the biggest gaps within Clark County in general has been Clark County Fire Marshal not consistently providing ongoing inspections. So by us stepping up and starting to do that, we're going to see a direct impact to our insurance. And hopefully our insurance rates, our rating will be lower, which is a good thing. And that will be passed directly on to citizens, myself included, within our service area. So, so that's an exciting thing we have coming up as well. So that's kind of the nuts and bolts of what's going on. And if there's any questions for me or anything?
Do you know where our ratings lie currently?
Currently, I should have looked up on my head because a couple of areas within are a little bit different, but I believe right here in La Center, we are a 5, I want to say, inside the city of La Center.
And that means?
That means there's room for improvement, but it's a good rating. It's a decent rating. Ideally, this with inspections will be down to a 4. Where you start seeing improvements, not so much at the residential level, but once you get into a 5 or so, that's where you start seeing at the residential levels decreases, and then once you get into 4s, the decrease in insurance actually isn't as much to the resident, but it's significant to industry, to commercial properties. So, which helps when they come in or want to come to a new area and everything, when they look at the total cost of their operations and how much it costs to insurance. One of the things they can't look at is, how much are we going to pay to insure our building? So those decreases will help there. So.
Thank you.
So, and of course, like you guys, fire district is a special purpose district. I liken it a lot to a school district. You know, we encompass a large area. We have an elected board, kind of like the school board that's elected, and we just partner and overlay, we share a lot of citizens together, so.
Just as a refresher for myself and the rest of the group, what's our level of medical service available here?
It depends on the day and the shift. Right now with our paramedics, we have ALS service and we have BLS service. So every shift, we try to distribute the paramedics. We do not have paramedics on every one of our staffed fire engines every day. So they are distributed throughout the district. And so it really depends on the shift and the day and where at. You know, it's kind of unfair to center them all in one area. So we try to disperse them out. So all of our fire engines are fully equipped to the paramedic level, but there's not necessarily a paramedic on every day, every shift.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Great report. Appreciate it very much. So next on the agenda, we have a community development staff report. Mr. Jeff Swanson will be providing the report, and then this evening we do have two representatives from Johansson Wing Architectural Architects, Mr. Ryan Wing and Carlos Espinosa, and they'll be presenting as well. So thank you for being here this evening, gentlemen.
Good evening, Council, Mayor. Jeff Swanson, I'm your consultant working on community and economic development issues in the jurisdiction. And I have a lot to go through this evening. So I'm going to start with my typical report, a few notes about what's going on in community development, the project list. And then it's good that we have Councilmember Onslow here from Ridgefield, because he's your regional AWC board member. We're going to be going through our legislative agenda in preparation for AWC City Action Days, which is next week up in Olympia. And then we're going to talk about the TDS building, get a little update on that project. So
City Hall building.
The City Hall building. It's not the City Hall building, but when we move in there, it's sort of like the Air Force One.
You signed the check, didn't you?
All right, so first and foremost, last year we hired the firm McKay Sposito to examine our business practices and processes in the Community Development Department. And they have prepared an evaluation, and we'll be conducting a work session here on February 12th, our next meeting at 5:30, to go through the findings of that and talk about the work program that'll be in place to implement their recommendations. And I noted this last month, DKS Associates, they're under contract looking at the intersection of Paradise Park Road and La Center Road to address some concerns that the Washington State Department of Transportation raised concerning a signalized intersection, which is what's planned for that intersection. The close proximity to the roundabout on the east ramp terminals there of the intersection. So DKS has found that in their analysis that in the year 2040, a traffic signal and a roundabout are predicted to operate essentially the same, meeting both the city's and the DOT's mobility standards. So DKS is looking at other issues like safety, right-of-way impacts, the cost and design context, and developing a conceptual layout for what a roundabout might look like, to look at how much right-of-way would be required to implement that as an option up there. And a draft memo should be coming to the city at any time now. So scrolling down to the project list here, I'll go to the map. That's far more interesting. And hopefully you can see that. Okay, so I'll walk through a few of these where we have some updates.
Can you use the laser just so we know kind of where these things are?
Sure, I can do that. All right, so the first one that I would like to highlight is number 4, which is right there, and that's the Peterson annexation. And this is an annexation that council took action on in August, and we've been working with the State Office of Financial Management to check a few boxes in order to finalize that, and council, you'll actually take action on that this evening. That'll wrap that one up, and Mr. Cairns will walk us through that when the time comes. Number 5 here is the Schlentz annexation, and we received a 60% petition, and that is under review by our planner of record, Ethan Spoo at WSP. Let's see, other updates. Number 7, the Center Middle School. This has been a very complex project from its inception, I think. And at this time, the school district has permits from the Army Corps of Engineers and the Department of Ecology. Today we had a meeting with the school district and consultants to talk about the lift station that they're required to build as part of the development. And they are in the process of satisfying some final engineering comments at this time. But they're very close to having building permits and being able to proceed with that project. The next one, I'll talk about management, which is actually on this other map right there. So Minute Management was in for a pre-application conference about 10 months ago, and just following up with the applicant's representative, we expect them to come in for site plan approval in March. So they'll have a submission in March that we're anticipating to move that project along, and I understand they're very anxious to get that done and get under construction really soon. And that project is convenience store, drive-through restaurant, some single-level multi-tenant retail space, and a hotel, like a 4-story hotel, around 95 to 100 room hotel. Let's see, Schwartz B&B. This one is right there. This came in for a conditional use hearing in the summertime, and we've had some recent contact with the applicant, and they're looking at coming in for what's called a type 2 post-decision review, slight change in use, and applying for variance on some glazing requirements in the downtown district that are required on buildings there. So more to come on that one here in the future. The other one that I will, let's go to number 15, the Holly subdivision, which is right there next to the Schlentz annexation. And we have final site plan approval has been issued, and they should be submitting for building permits here very soon. Kay's Place, number 16, right there. Kay's Place, there's one single-family residence that's been constructed. 3 plans were approved in 2019. In the week of January 6th, we received 2 plan submissions. So it looks like that one's picking back up. Number 17, Riverside Estates. On this one, we have the phase 1 lots and the offsite sewer under construction. Phase 2 engineering has been approved. Phase 3, that's the multifamily component. They have comments on the final site plan review that have been issued. And then in phase 1, 16 building plans have been approved. And I believe they held a groundbreaking on the week of January 13th for that subdivision. Other than that, there's a citywide project that's going on for planning, and that's the Shoreline Master Program update. And the city is working on obtaining a grant. We've been offered a grant from the Department of Ecology to do that planning work, and so we're getting that under contract. Any questions on any of the project stuff? Okay. Well, we'll move on here and we'll talk about city legislative priorities. So first and foremost, the city proposed that we endorse the Association of Washington Cities 2020 legislative priorities. And they have a set of issues going on around the state that they're asking all of the cities to sign on to. And that's to look at transportation in light of the initiative that was passed, capping tap fees. The state is trying to find about $500 million in either delays for projects or elimination of projects to bring in line the anticipated revenues with the project activity. And so AWC is really encouraging the legislators to address funding for transportation across the state. Public Works Trust Fund, this is one that is sort of a perennial issue. You may be aware that that fund has been swept a number of times in past sessions, and so it's sort of bumping along on life support. And the policy that we want the state to pursue is to let those loan repayments come in so that new loans can be made for infrastructure projects across the state. They're encouraged to look at some kind of tax increment financing option for cities to use for economic development. And this would put us more competitive with neighboring states in the region. Oregon has a very robust tax increment financing incentive program to encourage economic development. And you can see the result of that if you just take a drive through Washington County or Wilsonville or lots of different areas. There's lots of industrial development going on in some of those areas. Finance, this is, we're all subject to a structural deficit that's imposed by the 1% limitation on property tax increases. So this is the issue of costs in municipalities and jurisdictions go up greater than 1%, but revenues can only on the property tax side go up 1%, and so what we end up with is a reduction in services. On law and justice, there is a proposal, there are efforts statewide to support medication-assisted treatment services in city and regional jails to provide some local flexibility and control. On the environment, advancing a watershed-based strategic plan that'll address fish blocking culverts along with state culverts, so not just addressing the ones on the state system, but addressing some of the ones on the local system. And we think this could really benefit us here locally. We've obtained grant funding through the capital budget for East 4th Street, but we still have an ask coming up for construction dollars to construct that project, and that would likely come from a fund to address fish blocking culverts, especially in light of the constraints around transportation funding at the state level. And finally, housing. Lots of cities are pleading with the state to give them more tools for local control over affordable housing. And so this is not so much an issue in La Center, but it is in other jurisdictions in the state. And so this is asking the legislature to give cities tools to address their own problems and to have local control. That's really the message that La Center would be sending on that particular issue. Of course, Breezy Creek, we want to thank our legislators for appropriating $1.5 million to get through the pre-construction on that project, and let them know we'll be coming back looking for some help on construction funding. And then regional priorities. We, with other partners in the area, support the Clark College Boschma Farms campus, the capital request there, and are encouraging our legislators to continue to work on issues in the I-5 corridor. We also, as we did last year, support the Clark County Transportation Alliance 2020 policy statement. You can see our logo up here with a number of our jurisdictional partners. You see letter N up here, which is our project over Breezy Creek. let you take the time, if you haven't, to review that very lengthy policy statement. Are there any questions about the city's proposed legislative agenda? Again, this is something that we would be taking with us next week as we knock down doors up in Olympia. Yeah.
Jeff, in looking at the bullets here, in housing in particular, in affordable housing, has AWC taken a position relative to GMA and the effect that has on growth and building? Is there a connection between those two?
You know, there was a lengthy project done by the Ruckle House Institute, I guess, as part of the joint venture between Washington State University and the University of Washington, where they went all around the state gathering input on the Growth Management Act. And I believe that's been presented to the legislature. It was kind of interesting to go to some of the workshops and listen to the presentation of findings, because there was no real definitive, here's what we should do with GMA that came out of it. You had basically on every issue in GMA, people on both sides. There was no, more people think this should be done versus that. It was just kind of a laundry list of all the issues with GMA. And I don't suspect that there will be near-term action on that. And I don't know that, I haven't seen anything specifically come out of the AWC addressing any kind of GMA policies. Now, there was a bill last session that would amend the Growth Management Act with one word. It was called the One Word Change Bill. It was run by Senator Wilson. And Mayor Thornton and I went up and testified in support when that bill came up in committee. And it was to allow connections for municipal services, urban services, outside of an urban growth area. Right now, they're permitted if two conditions are met. And one of them, I believe, there has to be some kind of public health emergency, and I don't recall what the other condition was. But basically, the one-word change was to allow that connection should just one of those conditions be exigent, be present. And so this obviously would impact us, would allow us to connect to the Cowlitz Reservation and provide urban sewer services to that public wastewater treatment. And we don't really know if that bill's going to come back up again. One of our meetings next week that you'll be with us on is to meet with Senator Wilson and ask what the status of that bill is.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions about the legislative agenda?
Good report.
Thanks. Any concerns about the legislative agenda?
Transportation,
Okay,
Yeah.
please.
especially with the Breezy Creek and such.
Okay.
I'm not up to date if they can take back the money that's been appropriated. But I know, like us, we budget out money for different projects, and if we don't spend it, well, that's, we didn't spend it, so it hasn't been spent yet, so I don't know. I don't understand if they can take the money back or
Well,
not
so
use it
it's
in
not at
one-
risk of being pulled back because it came from a different revenue source. It's capital budget, not transportation budget.
Okay,
And so the initiative affects the transportation budget.
okay.
So they're looking at, for instance, delaying delivery of new ferries up in the Puget Sound area to reduce the amount of expenditure. Lots of other things around the state to try to make the lines cross where they're supposed to.
Yeah, good question.
Okay, other questions? All right, let's talk about the TDS building / new Senator City Hall. And as Mayor noted, we have Ryan Wing and Carlos Espinoza here from Johansson Wing Architects, who've been working tirelessly on this project with us. And so I'll just kind of give some high level where we're at with this project. And then we'll talk about a couple of decision points we have. So this building has some deferred maintenance, as you might imagine. And so there are kind of two aspects to preparing it for occupancy. One is to address the deferred maintenance issues. This is things like flooring, putting a fresh coat of paint in, updating the obsolete lighting systems, some HVAC systems that need to be replaced, those sorts of things that are just kind of nuts and bolts. And the other is the tenant improvements. So this is constructing walls and moving walls around to make the building suited for what the city's purposes are. So this is the main floor rendering, and you can see as you come in the entry here, there is a customer service counter. There are 2 bays for people to come in and interact with city staff, make utilities payments, submit permits, conduct really any kind of city business. So we'll have centralized cash receipting here, which is a much better internal control financially. We have a small conference room here for folks who need a little more in-depth help. We can call staff out to meet with customers. This is where the finance department would be located. Break room here, conference room here, and then this would be a flexible meeting space predominantly set up for your city council meetings and other public meetings. But what we're looking at is having furnishings that can be removed and stored so that this space can be used for a variety of different events. Second floor looks like this. So you come up the stairs. Mayor's office would be here. The conference room or flexible office here. Open office space here for community development. So a permit technician and building official. Actually, building official I think is going to be back here. I have our city engineer here. And our public works manager here. This is our plans room, plotter, and so on. So in terms of construction, there's currently a wall here that'll come out. This will be a little bit of reconfiguration and construction of some walls, but nothing too intense. We're not getting into substantial structural members. These are some renderings of different areas. So like in the break room with the cabinetry, that's a refrigerator, coffee machine, that kind of stuff. Coffee bar, what the drinking fountains look like. This is some awesome artwork that our architects have done for us. The lobby area, so this is those 2 desks. And then that small conference room, the entry to that. And then a couple more renderings here. This is what the plan room would look like if you stood in the middle and panned from left to right. Okay, any questions on the interior stuff? Yes?
First floor.
First floor?
The council area there, if I can keep counting, it looks like there's 7 or 8 positions on that. I'm assuming that curved bench is council.
Yep, there are 7 seats up there.
Is that all council seats? Because we have 5 councils now, and we're going to need to expand in the near future.
Yeah, this over here would be the staff table.
Okay, so the attorney and the...
Attorney and the clerk would...
Okay, so we're allowing for future growth on the council.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Other questions about the interior stuff? We're going to talk about exterior.
What about the basement?
The basement at this time would be unoccupied space. So we've talked to one potential tenant, and it appears they're maybe not interested. So we would likely just market the space and get it leased up and then address tenant improvements through the lease process.
Was it not big enough for what they were looking for?
I think that particular tenant was comparing bringing in a portable building, the cost of bringing in and owning a portable building on land that they already own to occupying this space and carrying their burden of the tenant improvements required.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Any other interior questions? All right, let's talk exterior. Now, on the exterior, there are a variety of deferred maintenance issues that need to be addressed. And so the building needs to be pressure washed from top to bottom. So that would be part of the scope that we would put out to bid. Siding needs to be caulked, and that needs a fresh coat of paint on it. So those are some rather expensive items that need to be done. In addition to that, we've asked the architect to look at this entry vestibule and perhaps give it a refreshed look, and also do some modifications that would provide for better energy efficiency and better security for the building. Rather than having what's there now is just a single entry, this would be setting up kind of a double door entry. So they've given us this rendering. Here's what it would look like if you're looking right at it with the single door entry. And one of the limitations that we're working with are these two poles. They are structural. They support that end of the building. And so the current entry sort of sits recessed, obviously, behind this facade between these two poles. So if we were going to, say, put a two-door entry in there, then we would need to do some structural engineering and look at some other way to distribute the weight burden of that part of the roof that those poles support. I'm going to shrink it down here a little bit. Okay, there we go. Okay, so here are some different entry sections. This is side view. See, here's the single door first entry. This would be the existing entryway. And so the decision point is we have a scope of work from the architect for $36,000 to scope out all of that exterior work, the siding, paint, caulking the siding, painting, pressure washing, putting all that in the bid documents, as well as speccing out the entry improvements, these entry improvements, and looking at some other options for the entry improvements. For example, if you wanted to do double doors, what would be involved in doing that? And then adjacent, and maybe a better way to look at this one would be to go back. These doors lead out onto a patio space. And so that exterior scope of work also looks at making some improvements to that patio space, cleaning it up and preparing it for public use. So Ryan, Carlos, do you have any additional comments here? I've kind of...
I can just speak to the vestibule. We just prepared some quick kind of schematic level plans to kind of communicate our intent to our consultants to solicit structural, mechanical, electrical design fees. There's a lot to be worked out here. We have confirmed that we are able to do a double door entry. We'll just need to re-support those existing roof columns. As Jeff stated, this will provide a much greater level of security, having a double door entry, and the airlock currently as it exists, every time that door opens, and it's a very wide open space, open to the second floor, you get that blast of cold air coming into the facility. So this will dramatically reduce that. We're happy to answer any questions you may have. Overall, we're in the final stages of construction and bidding documents. This would be the last piece that we need to incorporate in order to wrap things up.
On the double doors, can you go back to the floor plan showing the double doors out to the patio? I just had a question about that. Does that patio walkway have access out to the driveway? So if you had to bring something big in?
It does not. And that's another concern that we've had when we talked about it. The concrete is in pretty poor condition, cracked. So we've talked about adding a concrete topping slab coating to that. As well as, not shown here, but if you've ever been over to the building, there's a rock retaining wall that is just to the right of those doors. And I expressed some concern of somebody being able to fall. So I think part of our scope here is to provide a guardrail along.
Guardrail, sure. I work in hospital project management, and deliveries are always a problem. And that's why having a 4-foot door into that place is, I think, is important. And the single door entry, when I saw that, one, it looks misproportioned, and two, it would be, if you ever had to bring something big into there, it's just problematic. You know, you want to take out glazing to get something in.
So we initially showed the single door entry. As you can see here, we have the existing canopy system.
Oh, yeah, I'm familiar with the columns. I was the one that brought it up.
So I think we can work around that now and get a double door entry into the building.
So what kind of a clear opening do you think you could get?
A pair of 3-foot doors.
Oh, that'd be wonderful, yeah. Yeah, thank you.
Can you explain the security of the double doors for me, please? What makes it more secure?
Well, somebody enter, an access control is something that we're working with the city and their vendors on. But it would be possible to tie in to the service counter position, the ability to lock a door.
And these are glass doors?
Yes.
Okay. Do we have an estimated cost of this addition?
That is what they would be doing, is preparing both the design, final design, and giving an architect's estimate of the cost. Of course, we don't really know what all this is going to cost until we put it out to bid and see then what we get back from the market of bidders. It's like putting your house on the market, right?
Yeah, so at this point, we don't have a design. A lot of things would go into it. Some of the considerations that need to be made is we're introducing new foundation loads outside of the building, which we're anticipating will require foundation reinforcement on the basement level, kind of in that break room that they have, the angled wall you see there. So we need to understand the true impact of what's being proposed in order to provide an estimate.
Is there any work planned for the basement?
At this time, no. We wouldn't do any work down there until we had a tenant.
The scope of work does include some mechanical work in the basement level. That's the limit.
How common is that to leave those updates to your future tenant as opposed to capturing some of that work as you're already paying consultants and designers and construction crews? How typical is it to defer that until you have a tenant?
It's pretty common because you would be sort of speculatively putting in the same kind of flooring that you would have on the upper floors, and maybe the occupant would want a different type of flooring, for example. Like we're going to have carpet tiles on the main floor and the upper floor, and somebody may want
Skating rink.
Yeah, skating rink, or I guess hardened surface of some sort for whatever they were going to use it for. So it's better to kind of wait until you have a tenant, and then they can come in with their specifications on what they need, and then approve the space and determine who's going to share what that burden looks like in terms of who pays for the improvements. And if you recover them in the lease, or they pay it and just pay for the square footage. Yeah, Councilmember.
When we put this out to bid, are you going to be looking at different alternatives? I mean, I'm concerned with what the cost could end up being, and I think we have to keep in mind that's what we need to have and what we would like to have. Many times those are two different things.
Right.
And I just think in case there is some sticker shock, we need to have a fallback plan as well.
I think what we could do is we could put the entry vestibule, since that's kind of a significant unknown, we can put it out as an option. And if it comes in competitively, then we can elect that option, and if not, we can waive it and go with what we've got.
I like the sound of that. Is there any safety features in there that have to be redone, like, fire safety, sprinkler systems, the elevator, any of that type of?
The city, when the city purchased the building, they had the elevator evaluated, and there are some items there that need to be addressed, again, more along the lines of deferred maintenance. And the roof was also looked at, and the city got a bid to do some work on the roof. And rather than wrapping those into the total project, the city is going to go ahead and commence with that work.
What about fire?
Fire, I'm not familiar with the evaluations that have been done on the fire system there. I assume that they're adequate, but I can't state that with certainty.
Does that building have sprinklers? I don't remember.
It's sprinkled, yeah.
Okay, good.
It's got a riser room down on the lower level.
It's better than this one.
Podunk Tavern don't have any sprinklers.
Yeah, I gotta echo Doug's concern as well. I agree with you, Doug. What we need as opposed to what we want. And I do like the idea of being able to have that as an option, depending on cost.
Okay. We'll assemble the bid documents accordingly.
Just take in consideration, if you do it later, you're gonna pay 3 times as much for it. That's always a concern, you gotta really look at what you're buying.
I've never found doing it later to be less expensive.
No, it's never.
Well, and
Pay me now or pay me later, pay me later, pay me
the
more.
other issue to consider there is if you do it now, then you do it before you move in. And
Well, we went through 5 different remodels in that building in the time I was there for the telephone company, and let me tell you, trying to manage 85 employees while you're knocking down walls, still conducting service, and it's far wiser to just get it done, bite the bullet, and save the costs involved of trying to manage not only the employees, but the time you're impacting those laborers to get that work done and get them in and out quickly. It was eye-opening to me to see, all those driving factors behind remodels and what really could have been done far easier if we would have done it the right way before we put all those people in there.
there's definitely an impact to business flow should you decide to build an entry vestibule at a later date.
Well, you got public safety to be concerned with too, because the public's gonna be coming in and out of that building. When you have temporary entrance, that's just more risk for an injury or an accident.
You also still have to consider the amount of money too. I mean, we only have so much money. I know we got a good deal on the building, but we'd like to keep a good deal going as well. So, when we're passing budgets and looking at spending $500,000 over here and stuff like that, and you come back to the building that we don't have an idea of cost, that has to be taken into consideration as well.
Is there any talk about the garage and the parking lot? Any changes there?
I think we've discussed any changes there except for there's some repairs and things that need to be done to exterior lighting. I believe Public Works is handling that.
Is there any chance that some of our own employees can do some of these repairs? I'm not sure how that works. I mean, like the pressure washing of the building and such like that. I mean,
Well, I think on the the pressure washing you want to do in conjunction with the painting.
Yeah.
One of the issues is the lower level is comprised, the exterior is clad with CMU block. And the gutter on the, I guess that'd be the south side of the building. The gutter's separated from the roof, and so for however many years, water's been cascading down that CMU block, and it's become stained. So I believe Public Works, when they have the opportunity, they're going to go and sort of test with a pressure washer and see if it'll come clean. And if not, we may need to look at some kind of elastomeric type of coating to, cover over the staining and seal the block from moisture penetration. The other issue is that stairwell that is under that cascade of water. All of the metal railings need to be sandblasted and repainted. They've rusted out pretty badly.
Can you sandblast the concrete block at the same time to take off the stain?
I suppose that'd be something that could be looked at.
And will the remodeling be a prevailing wage project?
I believe so. It's a public project, yeah. So all trades would be a prevailing wage.
Change orders get expensive. Yes, I am learning.
Great. Great report. Thank you very much. Any other questions for either Jeff or the architects? Okay, well, again, thank you both for being here this evening. Thanks for all your hard work to get us this far along with the project, and yeah, it's pretty exciting, so.
Thanks, Jeff.
So right now, the way I understand it, we will go ahead and ask the architects to go with that design of the optional vestibule, but to keep it as a separate cost item when we go to bid it. Is that?
Yeah. Will the work for that patio, the railing, and repairing that patio be part of the base bid to provide access? Because if we don't do the vestibule in front, we still have to have a big door to get things in the building.
Yeah, so we can break it out, and we can work with you all to identify the bid process.
What big things?
Yeah,
Furniture,
Coke machine.
Coke machine, well, that'll go through. Yeah.
We got, that's
4 to 8 inch cook range for the kitchen, I don't know. No, it's just, you need, a 3-foot door is fine for residential.
Well, it's a handicap door. So, I mean, we got everything in there before.
The patio door.
I'm sorry?
About the patio door?
Yeah, just that they said that
Just
the
a double
patio,
wide door.
the patio doesn't connect to the walkway.
Well, there's a
Right.
path that's this wide, but it isn't.
Oh, there is?
Well, just so you could roll a piece of furniture in if you had to.
Oh, I'm just saying, we've
Provide a
got
temporary
refrigerators and
bridge.
ovens and things in there now, but.
Okay,
Okay. All right.
I'm done.
Okay, very good. Again, thank you. We have one additional staff report this evening from the Finance Department, and Mr. Dustin Bailey will be presenting.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. For the January staff report, I have a budget to actual for you. And I'm just gonna scroll to the table, highlight some items for you. For the general fund, revenues were above budget in several categories, while others fell short. City's largest revenue source, the gambling card rooms, was slightly under budget. So overall, general fund revenues we have at 94.71% of budget. When you look at the expenditures by department, we held pretty close to within budget with the exception of legislative, community development. Legislative expenditures exceeded budget by $276, so that was pretty close to forecast. Community development expenditures exceeded budget by $19,652 due to unexpected consultant support related to development activity. Overall, the general fund expenditures we have at 100.07%. And then just looking at the general fund deficit, you can see the fiscal year 2019 budget deficit was $527,619, and this deficit is largely because the deviation you see between Amendment 2 to the budget and the actual is because of revenues falling short of expectations. Moving on to the enterprise funds. The sewer enterprise fund exceeded revenue projections by almost $400,000, and that's largely due to the ERU increase across the city. In addition, the sewer fund received a repayment of $311,513 from the Cowlitz tribe for shared litigation expenses. Expenditures for the sewer enterprise fund came in under budget for the year. Stormwater utility enterprise fund fell short of projections due to the late start in the fee collections, and that was due to delays in completion of the rate study and the subsequent required actions by the council, so we just fell behind schedule with that. There were a number of front-loaded expenses. The fund were not fully covered with revenue collections, so we should see a normalization in the stormwater fund in 2020. It's just because of the late start in collections.
Hey Dustin, real quick, I don't
Yes.
remember us budgeting out stormwater for this year's budget.
It was
That's right.
budgeted.
It was actually in there?
Yes, it was. For 2019, it was in the budget.
Yet we hadn't passed it until June?
Correct. So the expectation was to start collection a couple months earlier than we ended up getting to, just because of some delays in the rate study.
Is that typical for, Mayor, is that typical for us to budget stuff out that we haven't passed?
Well, the council, yeah, we opted to move forward with the stormwater utility. So, yeah, we did budget out for, what, was it a full year or?
It was a full year.
Yeah. So with anticipation that we were going to initiate the stormwater utility in 2019. So, again, it was, as you may recall, a very involved process. We worked with FCS on that, and yeah, not uncommon for those timelines to slip a little bit, and as a result, it didn't get initiated as quick as we thought it would, so the revenues fell short. Yeah. But yeah, that's something that the city council planned prior to 2019.
Any other questions on the budget to actual for 19 over here? Okay, and then the last part of my staff report is just a breakdown of the card room revenues. Again, you can see slightly under budget, but not by much. Are there any questions about my staff report?
So we were 200 and some odd $1,000 more than what we thought?
More than what we expected with budget amendment 2, yes, and that was because of the revenues we had fallen short of what we projected in a few of the categories, unfortunately.
Yeah, sorry.
So any other questions for Dustin? Seeing no questions, thank you, great report, I appreciate it.
Thanks, Dustin.
Okay, so next, the city council will be going into executive session. This session is to discuss collective bargaining sessions with employee organizations and, I'm sorry.
We have ordinance, you want to kick
Oh,
this till afterwards?
sorry, excuse me, I passed the ordinance up. Sorry, Dan. Yeah, so we do have actually a corrected ordinance this evening, ordinance 2019-17 regarding the Peterson annexation, and Mr. Cairns will be presenting this.
Sure. This is this doesn't come up very often. This is the second time this has happened in my tenure here. It's where we had an annexation and there was an error in the legal description. And as none of us really know how to read, are good at reading legal descriptions, so I'm surprised it doesn't happen more often. And it's a very difficult error to detect. And apparently the surveyor detected the error in his legal description just before the council hearing, but it didn't get caught in the final signed ordinance. So, you want to know how it got caught? These all go through the state, and the Office of Financial Management sends them over to, I think, WashDOT, who has a program. They feed the legal description in, and it plots it. And they know it's the correct description if the lines meet, and this one didn't. So they sent it all the way back, and word came to us to correct the legal description. So that's what this is about. And I'm told, we also ran the corrected ordinance and legal through Office of Fiscal Management, and they're okay with it now. So, any questions about it? Otherwise, it's a pretty straightforward recommendation to approve this corrected ordinance.
No impact to anybody?
The Petersons.
I mean, guess how big of an error was it?
I don't know, because I didn't see the printout. I always wonder, how far off is it? I've never seen the printout on these things.
Okay. And nothing's changed, so I mean.
No, this is the annexation you anticipate.
Yeah.
What was driving the annexation, when you, if you recall, on all of these, you see a map. And so that's what guided your decision, yes or no, how much. And so, as all annexations are run that way. And so in terms of what you thought you're annexing, that has not changed at all. It's just a scrivener's error in the legal description. Usually it's a chunk, like a paragraph of the text is missing. I think. I'm not really sure. I mean, we could go back and compare the original description that came from the surveyor with the one we have now. So I'm surprised it doesn't happen more often. So.
Very good, thank you.
Mayor, I move that ordinance 2019-17 as corrected be approved and adopted by the city council, for it is important that the lines touch.
Second.
So it would seem.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt ordinance 2019-17 as corrected by approved and adopted by the city council. All in favor, say aye.
Let's do a roll call since it's
Okay,
an ordinance.
it's an ordinance, yep. If I could have a roll call, please.
Councilor Boff.
Yes.
Councilor Stimmel.
Yes.
Councilor Williams.
Yes.
Councilor Strobehn.
Yes.
Councilor Cerveny.
Yes.
Thank you, council. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
So now the city council will be going into executive session. And it's, this session is exempt from open public meeting requirements per RCW 42-30.140. And it'll last for approximately 20 minutes, and no action will be taken when we come out of session. Thank you, everyone, for being here this evening.
Thank you.